Hey, what's up? This is Kevin from Kevin's Barbecue Joints, and welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of Wine BBQ with Erin Feges. Super excited. We're super pumped for our new season. Thank you guys all for watching and listening to last year. We had a lot of amazing guests, and this year we're going to have a lot of amazing ones too, pairing the worlds of wine and barbecue, just like Erin and Patrick pair it at their Feges BBQ Spring Branch location. In this episode, Erin and I talked to Ricky and Katie from Alta Marfa Winery in Marfa, Texas. It is very West Texas. They explained the location, where it is, the soil type, everything about that. But this is such an interesting story. Number one, it's interesting because Katie worked with Erin at Feges BBQ Greenway Plaza. So there's some interesting stories and how that all worked out. And Ricky worked in the same complex that Feges BBQ is in. So that's the whole synergy right there. But I'm gonna make this intro short and sweet because we do talk to them for a long time, and then we also go over everything that Feges has going on at the end of the interview. But I think the one strong takeaway from what they're doing and from their story is that anything is possible. That if you put your mind to something and really focus, you can really do just about anything. They didn't come from a background of wine. They didn't have a lot of assets to put into this business. And so they had to use their will and determination. The pandemic gave them a little push, but I think that that's a great takeaway from this. So I can't thank Ricky and Katie enough for taking the time. I can't thank Erin enough for wanting to do this show because it's such a fun idea and it's just turned out to be better than we ever imagined. If you're watching this prior to the Super Bowl, Feges will be open all day on Sunday throughout the game, so you can come in, stop in, eat there, drink some wine. They're also making scratch-made sausage, so that's a really cool takeaway. So all the Feges stuff is at the end, all the Alta Marfa stuff is at the beginning. If you want to support Alta Marfa Winery, join their wine club. I'll have a link below. But sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode.
There's a lot going on with Alta Marfa, and there's a lot going on with like the Feges relationship with Ricky and Katie that I think is super interesting and cool. And I'm looking forward to talking about all of it. But what we were just talking about is the timely opening of their winery in Marfa, which is a historically fickle business town in the sense that most people are not very committed to their business hours. And so we were just talking, they've opened this winery. They're committed to being open a couple days a week. And I think it's really awesome. This is like a huge step towards what they want to do. So I'd love to hear a little bit more from them about that.
Yeah, so we just opened this past weekend, was like our grand opening, and we're going to be open every Friday and Saturday. And for right now, just for a couple hours, basically until it gets dark.
Are you guys in downtown Marfa?
Not like downtown, but because it's a small town, it's like we're on the main road. Yeah, we're on like the main road.
So is this something that people should call ahead to make an appointment, or will you have hours, or will they look at social media? What's the best way to make sure people, when they do stop by?
So that's part of being open with regular hours. All of last year, we were open for like tastings by appointment, or you could come visit if you emailed us or called. But this is meant to be just open, given hours. It's like 3 to 7 on Friday and noon to 7 on Saturday.
Oh,
and just drop in. Don't need a reservation or anything. And we're really trying to have food pop-ups, or like, hot food on Saturday at least.
Oh, that's cool.
And then we have other snacks and tinned fish and stuff when we don't have that. But especially Marfa, weird place for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But there's often, especially around lunchtime, just no food to be had, especially this time of year. So
explain why Marfa is a tricky place.
I mean, it's a small town. I think it's like one of those things that it's super touristy and has gotten a lot of write-ups, but it's still like, it's a town of a little over 1,000 people. So it's like any small town that, like, there's not a huge population of available employees. There's not necessarily a lot of like draw or like capital within the community to be open every day. But like, it is this weird touristy thing that, because there are a lot of people visiting, there is demand for some type of stuff, and there is demand for like good food and all of that. And so unlike a lot of small towns, there is like some really quality food and some really quality like bars and a lot of cool things happening, but it still is a small town that doesn't have consistent employment.
And a lot of people think of Marfa, at least, and I'm in Los Angeles, I'm California. When I think of Marfa, and I have not visited yet, as an arts center, or people that are artistically minded or creative. Is that still the case, or is that the case?
Totally, yeah. It basically was like obviously not founded or anything, but this artist like Donald Judd came there in I think the 70s or 80s and bought up a lot of the town and opened his like 2 museums, Judd Foundation and Chinati. And so and brought a lot of his like artist friends at the time. And so there was a lot of art starting then, and his 2 museums live on and continue to bring in a lot of art to the town. And so that has driven a lot of like people that are into art or creative pursuits kind of are still pretty present in the town.
It's also too, isn't it home to a barbecue joint?
It is. Convenience West.
Convenience West. I've heard great things.
Yeah, they're like on our end of town. So like we're slightly going out of town, but they're our neighbor by like about 500 feet, and they're super awesome. Yeah.
And they seem really creative and interesting. And I followed. I was making a blog post about them with photos, and they're funky people. They just seems like fun, and so that's interesting. So now for someone who's on the barbecue side that is just getting into wine, this is now 2 places at least, and then plus the museums and different things too. Wow, that's cool.
Definitely, and that goes back to the small town thing. For a town this size, it's not just a town that's this small. It's that there's a lot of small towns that have a lot more things because they're an hour away from a large city, and we are 3 hours away from a small city.
You're 3 hours away from nothing.
Yeah.
Are you 3 hours away from which one? Is it, how far away are you from Marathon?
Marathon, or maybe like an hour and a half.
Okay.
But obviously that's still a small town.
Yeah.
That's a
we're
really small
like
town
too. We're like 3 hours from El Paso. So that would be like probably the next, or 3 hours from Midland too. So those would be like the 2 next largest places.
But Marathon also has good barbecue. So
yeah, no, that's and I've heard of people going through that like little road, and especially going to Big Bend National Park.
Big Bend.
I don't know, I was gonna say Big Bend, but for some reason it didn't sound right coming out of my mouth. See, I'm still a little.
Is that the place in London, or is that the place in Texas?
I've just seen the sky at night, and it just looks gorgeous. And
so I think you're talking about Ben Sassani's photo.
Probably with his son sitting on top of it.
On the truck.
Yeah, it's a beautiful photo. But also too, I think he gives a class for. Anyways, I digress. How did you guys? Because Erin off camera yesterday spoke to me about the connection. How did you worked together at one point, right?
Yeah. Yes. I worked for Erin I worked for Erin and Patrick when they first opened Feges in the Greenway building, and I wasn't one of their like first employees, but was like in the first like 3 or 4 employees, and helped them like open that spot, and was there for like probably maybe a year and a half. I don't 100% remember, but was there for like a good amount of time. And Ricky worked in that same building just as like an engineer. So we carpooled to work, and I went to my kitchen job and he went to his engineering job.
Well, and Katie's being like she's downplaying her role because we had such a small team, and she was part of the opening crew. So like she really was vital to getting us, we got open, and it was like our first business. So lots of learning curves, but you really were an amazing person to work with. And then you went on and did some really fun stuff that was more like culinary focused. But I was telling Kevin yesterday, I remember your interview really well because you had this teaching background, and there was just a lot of like interesting things that were part of the interview that we learned about you because you're a really interesting person. And when we were talking about your 5-year, like what do you want to be doing in 5 years? You'd said something about, well, my fiance and I are, we want to do wine. And that was like the first that I became aware of what you guys were doing. And I think it was still really, it was more than a concept by then, but it was still in the very early phases. And we are coming up on 5 years. Like that was in about a month or 2, we would be hitting that 5-year mark from when we had that interview, and you said that was your answer, and like you're doing it, like look what you're doing now. So I think that's really cool.
When first Feges BBQ location started almost 5 years ago, we didn't have a concrete plan of like, well, we want to have a winery in 5 years. I think at that point we were just about to plant, or no, we weren't yet. We had decided to plant a vineyard basically. Okay. And there was no timeline for having a winery or even making wine. It was more of a side thing we were doing while working in Houston, living in Houston. We had no plans to leave Houston. So, obviously for that and many other bigger reasons, the last 5 years have things have changed around a lot.
Your location, like where you guys are, it's so unique and it's so remote. How did you end up there?
So, I mean, the uniqueness and the remoteness is definitely why, but basically I Googled where is the least hot place in the summer in Texas.
Yeah. Why was that important?
So not for our own comfort. This is for with the idea of like wanting to grow grapevines to make wine. And in a lot of places in the state, the climate is so hot and so humid and rains so much that it's an extremely challenging place to grow grapes. Whereas here, it's cooler, it's not humid. The climate is such that it's a more ideal place to try to do that because of the altitude. The altitude is the reason why it's different. And yeah, where we're planting vines is over 5,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
So for the people that are listening and watching, where exactly are your grapes that you're growing located?
The grapes we're growing are located in the Texas Davis Mountains, which is 3 hours east of El Paso. Yeah, about 7 hours from Austin. We're about an hour and a half from the Mexican border. So far west Texas, very, very remote.
Are you living right by there?
Yes, grapevines in two places actually. One is at the house we're living in, and then one is about 5 miles from there. And we live like 15 minutes outside of the town of Marfa.
You're right at the base of the mountain, right? What soil type are you? I mean, is it rocky? Like I can only imagine, because you guys are doing everything yourselves, right? Yeah. You're self-funded. There's not like this big financial machine, theoretical machine or figurative machine, like providing you with all sorts of equipment. So you're having to do all the heavy labor yourself, right? And I can only imagine that ground is it's giving you a workout.
Yeah. So we're at like kind of the base of Blue Mountain is the name of the mountain. And all of the mountains in like this range are like volcanically formed. So it is extremely rocky. We like extremely struggled to get any amount of holes in there. And there's basically just no soil.
Very challenging to dig holes there. And yeah, definitely a lot of that ends up getting done by hand because we don't have a tractor or a bulldozer or any of these things.
And it's kind of too steep and too rocky to even really run like large equipment over.
Yeah, we need some very, very serious equipment to do that.
When you were working at Feges with Erin, and you were an engineer, what was the impetus to make you guys think we want to do this? And because there's people that I think I've talked to a lot of people. Oh, I'd love to have a vineyard someday, or I'd love to make wine someday. What made you, was there some place that you visited that made you think this is something we want to do for life, or family members? Or
I think there's not a family connection. I look at it more as wanting to start our own business of some type. And then where you go from there is like, well, what thing am I interested in? And that was wine, but more specifically, like it started out as growing grapes. So like more interested in farming, growing grapevines, like both of those things. But I'm sure, to be honest, these days that question, it sort of sounds like, yeah, why did we want to do this?
But I don't imply that.
Definitely a lot of days of like, oh man, back at Greenway, that was pretty nice. But yeah, I know. I mean, I'm sure Erin can answer this question about starting a business the same way as I think there's some amount of just wanting to work for yourself and not for somebody else.
It's like the thing that we love the most and hate the most.
Yeah.
When there's problems, there's nobody to like, you're like, oh, I'm the problem person.
This is not working because of me.
That's hilarious. But did you think so then you guys, it was obviously something that you brought up when you talked to Erin, I guess even the interview or maybe while you're working, but how did you have the confidence to make that jump? or do you still not have it? Oh, we just did it.
I'm not sure we still have it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I remember almost every weekend that you guys were going, either both of you or one of you was driving or flying. I guess you kept a truck at the Midland Airport, and I want to ask you about these trucks too, because this is like fascinating to me. But you would fly to Midland, drive, and you'd spend the whole weekend just tinkering and building. And part of it was like the tent that you guys had, which was the structure there, and then the irrigation system. Like you were always, every weekend you had like a big to-do list and a big project, and you guys seemed very motivated. And it may be that like, because it was all a blur, that all kind of like seems almost like disassociated from yourself, but that's how I remember it. I remember you guys were you just like turned and burned. You were like, we have to get these things done. I was so impressed by your ability to just like, and you had a lot of obstacles, right? Like as everybody does, but I just remember because you guys were documenting it, like things would show up on Instagram and social media and the stories, and I would just be like, man, this is when people just like quit. This is when people are like, quit it. And you didn't. You kept doing it, and you have a big support system of friends, but you didn't have a big support system in the sense that you had all these resources available to you, which makes things harder, which is why it's even more impressive that you stuck with it and you kept going. And you guys are, bottling wine now. And I would just love, I remember we came out to visit in May of 2018 because I was pregnant. I just found out I was pregnant, and Ricky, you were there and you were talking about the irrigation system. And I feel like because you're an engineer, these are the things that you get like really excited about and into, but you were really building a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like you were building things.
Irrigation system, the tent, we had like a safari tent there that we stayed in for several years. All that stuff was homemade, and had there were good and bad things about that. Yeah, I think initially, when we were living in Houston and going out on the weekends, it was a lot of work, but there was no pressure for anything really to happen other than like we wanted the grapevines to grow when we planted them, and we wanted progress to happen, but there was no, at this time we're both working full-time in Houston, and at that stage there's also no way like you're getting revenue, or we didn't have anything to sell, so it wasn't really a business at that point. It was more just like, we're going to try to see if we can plant vines and have them actually grow. Whereas I think that what I think Kevin was starting to ask about is like, when is like the transition? And that really, I think, was COVID related, because we had no plan to have a winery or do any of that stuff really until COVID happened. Katie was working at a restaurant, restaurants close, get laid off. And then my job became a remote work situation. And then also I was working for an oil company. Oil price goes down to zero. They're all, everything is bad. And the company I was working for basically was asking people to like volunteer to quit.
Yeah, it happened a lot.
Yeah.
And you were like, me.
Yeah, well, I think I sort of maybe got caught up this was June of 2020. So I think I got sort of caught up in the world is ending, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what the future is at that time. Yeah, like
exactly. It was very uncertain, and I think, I don't know, I quit that job, and then about 15 minutes later tried to unquit. Because that was the quitting was the moment when I was like, oh, maybe I should think about this, and then probably should have done that in the other order.
Yeah.
They said no, I'm quitting.
That's shocking.
Yeah, so then it was sort of a week of freaking out and being like, well, if we had wanted to start a winery, we probably needed a bunch of money and security and resources, which we now don't have anymore. So that didn't really make any sense. But at that point, it was sort of like, still deep COVID, still no oil job to go back to. So it was like, well, the only option is like, well, can we make the wine thing a business now? Like, what would it take to do that? So we basically spent 6 months trying to make a business plan to do that, which again, we had not done before because there was no plan to have it. So did that for about 6 months and were able to like borrow some money to start. Basically we got, you can call them investors, but basically people who loaned us money to lease a winery space and buy grapes the first year and buy equipment and do all that stuff. And we worked on this business plan for like 6 months, and we set a time of like sending it out to anyone we could think of. And I was convinced that we probably were not going to get enough, the amount of money that we decided we needed. Turns out we should have asked for a lot more money. That would have been better. But we ended up getting the money that we thought we needed. So then it was like, okay, well, now we're going to make wine this year and it's going to be a winery. It ended up taking a full another year to get our own winery space. So we ended up having to rent a space in Fredericksburg, which is 5.5 hours from here. So we're driving back and forth there. Lots of driving involved.
It sounds like a lot of moving around, like flying, driving. But this is interesting, and it's interesting because I've talked to a couple people in general and in these interviews who not wine related, but that COVID pushed them in a certain direction. And it seems like this pandemic, if it wasn't for that, we might not be speaking, or it would be a different scenario. Maybe it'd be 2 years later, or who knows what.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
I don't see any way in which without COVID happening, we wouldn't still be living in Houston. I don't know, who knows what would happen.
That's wild.
Yeah. And we've lived here for 2 years now.
But you guys did you know how to make wine when you this is so fascinating. This is great. And when people watch this, they'll understand what your journey was, and it'll make them appreciate what you're doing even more, I hope.
So we made wine before 2020, like before COVID. I think 2019 was the first time we made wine.
Okay.
It basically was like one of now like our like business vineyard partners, but also who's been like a good mentor to us kind of the whole time for like farming, basically had extra grapes and was like, do you want to make wine this year from these grapes? And you can just like make it in my winery. So we did that in 2019, and he kind of like helped us. So we technically had made wine before we decided to like, quit all of our jobs and make wine full time.
That's great.
But it was,
and that was laser cats or laser kittens. I remember that.
Laser.
But that was like, we made 10 cases of wine, which like there's 12 bottles in a case. So like that's like homebrew territory.
Yeah.
Not even,
That sounds like what my next door neighbor when I was a kid, that he made wine. He stomped grapes. He was half blind and he stomped grapes in his boxer shorts. He was an old Italian man with blasting Italian music and singing. And then he'd leave a bottle on my parents' like wall. But he made probably that many. Yeah. Even less probably. Yeah. Wow. So at least you got some chops. You got a chance to.
Yeah. I mean, we did it. I think winemaking wise, it's something that you only get to do once a year. So there's a pretty long time period from doing it once and then thinking about, well, what would I do differently? And then doing it again. And well, now what am I going to change, and doing it again? So we've done a lot of research in terms of drinking a bunch of different wines and thinking about what bearing that has on what we're doing. And then also just trying to ask as many people as we can find, as many questions as possible. It's like, why do you do this? What did you do to make this wine taste this way? Or, all those different things. So it's just an ongoing process, the learning. For the
winemaking, that because Ricky has like chemical engineering background, he like has done a lot of chemistry and all of that kind of stuff, at least on the front end, has understood a lot of the like scientific things, at least definitely more so than myself. But like, I think that's made some of the, at least entry into guessing about how you should make wine a little bit easier.
Yeah, definitely.
The wines that you released last year, was that your third go at making wines? Your third year Or was there more?
Yes.
Last year, if it was 2021.
2021
Yeah.
was our third vintage. Yeah, which those ones.
Those wines, yeah. Yeah.
So I had the Tempranillo. Tell us what that was called. You guys had the series of the 3 Tempranillos grown in different soil types.
Yeah, so three bottlings of Tempranillo, each from a different vineyard in Texas, and then labeled by the soil type. So there's limestone, sandstone, and volcanic. And those vineyards, each of those vineyards is, a few hundred miles apart from the other, but all within Texas. So the idea was these are all going to be really different, even though it's the same grape variety and we're doing the winemaking the same, the process is the same, and it worked. They were all pretty different. So that was a really cool thing.
As somebody who drinks wine from a curiosity standpoint, more so than from like a social standpoint, like I drink wine because I'm curious about it, probably how you guys approach like, the flavorings and understanding like the questions that you want to ask other producers. I thought it was so interesting to try them. I didn't try them all in the same day, but I tried them all like within a week, and I would pour them for Patrick, and like we were always with groups of people, vastly different. And it's so cool because I don't think Patrick really understood, he's not really into wine. So it all kind of blows over his head when you're talking like terroir and soil type and climate and like all of these things, how much sunlight it gets, how much exposure, all of it. It doesn't mean anything to him. But I think having them, like knowing that they were all the same grape, and because it was from you guys, he paid more attention to what was going on. And it kind of like flipped a light for him that he understood now what makes wine so intriguing for people. Because I was like, this is fascinating. I think my favorite was the limestone. That was also the first one. And I was just blown away. I think I posted about it. Like you guys have your winemaking's really, you guys probably still feel like you have a lot to learn. And certainly you do, because this is only your 3rd year doing it. But wow, you guys are producing some really awesome stuff. I was really impressed.
Definitely excited to hear that kind of story, like you said, with Patrick. I think that's the way we do our labels and write what we write on the labels. And we made the last 2 years made like 16 wines each year, which isn't really a good idea. But I think all of that stuff together reflects it. Like we're sort of in the same place, just a little further into it of being like, wow, having that light bulb turn on and have that curiosity of like, oh, that's why this is like this. This is, it's sort of like ongoing learning. And I think it's always exciting when you sort of bring people along with you like that.
Yeah. I think it was so valuable because for us in our relationship with like me and Patrick, he's really into whiskey and bourbon, and I'm really into wine. And there's the things that he likes about whiskey and bourbon are the things that I like about wine. The fact that he can like tell differences, and that he can respect producers and practices and all of that. But it was just really awesome to see it kind of click for him for the first time. Like I said, I drink more for curiosity. So when people are like, pick a wine on the menu, I'm like, you really don't want me to order for you guys. Cause I'm going to order like the most esoteric, probably the cheapest, but not because that's my intention. It's just like the wines that I go for are not like these classic wines. And the reason is because I know what those classic wines, I know I'm going to like that. And I actually don't want that. I want to be risky. I want to try something new. And so it's fun for me to try y'all's wines. It's really fun for me. Like I would maybe on a different podcast, like just want to know so much about how you guys are able to manipulate flavors or get certain things out of wine. Like what have you learned in all of your probing that's kind of steered you in directions for your winemaking?
I mean, I don't know if I have an exact answer for that, but kind of like part of the, like kind of going back to the reason why we made 16 wines, or the reason why we made like those 3 wines that came from different soil types, is kind of this. Obviously we're trying to learn, but also Texas is like a super pretty new state for making wine that is not like really established and is still kind of learning what like type of grapes grow here, where where do they grow? How should you treat them? Kind of all this kind of stuff. So I think we more approach the winemaking of like not really doing any manipulation. And it's more like what happened in the farm that's making it different from year to year or different from place to place. So I think that's like much more of our type of winemaking, which, you know, maybe again sometimes could be bad because they're going to taste different from year to year. We're not ever sometimes going to get the same wine, which is sad if it was really good wine and then all of it's gone. But I think that's kind of more what we.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. I think also, you know, what we're doing at the winery is there's only so much we can do with the grapes that we end up with. And part of being, you know, a winery in Texas is that like there's lots of wine that in 2020 we made, or in 2021 we made, and then we couldn't get the grapes the next year. So then we do something different with different grapes. So there's lots of, you know, there's in different places in the world or different winery setups, it's sort of like a lot of wine is made where you have one vineyard and you make a wine out of that, and then the next year you have the same vineyard and you just do that, and you're learning. You could sort of like learn in a sort of more linear way, and you still have differences between the years. Of 1 year was a hot year, 1 was a cold year, they're going to be different. But we are trying to get to a point, I would say we're at the beginning of going in search of that, of like how can we get to a point where we know certain things work well, and we're going to try to like commit to those and do those every year so we can improve, rather than just sort of starting from scratch every year with everything.
Yeah, and that's a challenge. But also too, through doing episode like season 1 of this podcast, Erin has talked about the fact that that's something too that she loves, is that every year it's going to be different with different winemakers that she chooses and that she likes to use, because that's the beauty. And when that's gone, that's gone. It's kind of like there's something special about that too. But obviously consistency, you know, mentally it would be a little easier for you guys to have something where you're just tweaking slightly as opposed to starting from scratch, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. And that, to be clear, the goal is not to make each wine, even if we're making like a certain wine year after year, the goal is to not make it the same every year.
Yeah.
The goal is to make it the best version of what it can be in that year. But that's a whole different thing from just making an entirely different wine out of different grapes from a different vineyard. You know, that's
a huge challenge.
Yeah.
How do you get past that? Because you're purchasing based on, in some regard, availability, right?
Absolutely.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, availability is a challenge. I think, you know, one way is developing, you know, the longer we do it, we can develop stronger relationships with grape growers to the point where we can have more consistency, or, you know, sort of, you know, just have a longer term relationship that allows more consistency. And then some of that is also deciding, like, you know, we've tried making a certain wine a few different times, different ways, and we don't have an answer for this, so let's try something, like just stop and try something else. The other thing is growing our own grapes. You know, that's something that we're still working on, you know, 5 years later. And we've made a lot of progress and we've learned a ton. You know, when we started, we didn't know anything about growing grapes or farming or doing any of that stuff. So it's definitely very slow progress, you know, because farming, just, you can only do, you know, you one annual cycle every year, and that's what you can do. And then also because now we're trying to run a winery full time and then both also work other jobs. So there's a limited amount of time. So that just kind of has to happen as slow as it needs to happen. But that's another way to get consistency and stuff, is having our own grapes, which we have more control over.
What grapes are you growing?
We have 2 little vineyard planting spots right now. One is a red field blend, meaning there's like 25 different red grape varieties all planted in the same place, all mixed up.
Wow.
And then the other one is a similar thing, but with white grapes.
And you're kind of testing to see what grows best?
So it's not as much that. I think when we first started, we had that idea of like, well, we're going to plant different things and then pick the ones that do well. At this point, I think it's not as scientific as that. It's more like we plant 25 varieties all mixed up over a couple acres. And that way, in a hot year, some of them are going to do better and some of them are going to do worse. And then in a rainy year, some of them are going to do better and some of them are going to do worse. So you have this sort of like strength through diversity situation. And then over the very long term, say, 25 years from now, there's always like attrition of vines in a vineyard from time to time, and some that do well and some don't. So it's what you sort of do is vines that die or aren't thriving or whatever, you might take one out and replace it with a cutting from this vine over here that's doing well. And we might not even know which variety was the bad one and which was the good one or whatever, but it doesn't really matter once you sort of have them all out there and see what they're doing.
And the like field blend also is like, when we make the wine, all of those will just basically be put into one wine, with also the idea being like, because it's different grapes, depending on the like year, if one has like more acid or one got more ripe or one is like whatever, ideally the whole wine at the end kind of balances out. And it's not as much like, oh, it was a crap year for this grape, now we're just kind of at a loss. The idea is like, hopefully kind of balance.
So you're like growing a red blend.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I've never heard that. That's awesome. That's really neat.
You guys need to like trademark a name for it. Like the German wine, like the Edelsweiser, but you just need to like create like the Marfa version of that.
Yeah, our own thing.
Yeah.
Is that something that other people do, or is that something unique to you guys? Or do you?
That's
it's common,
very old-fashioned thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And I think it was something that was done for resilience and consistency year after year, so that you're less vulnerable to not having a crop or having a bad crop or something like that. Yeah.
Like putting all your eggs in one basket kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like an insurance policy that you're not going to be out of luck every year or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I'm familiar with like the vinification reason for blending, like you want a tannic grape. Like there's a reason why Bordeaux blends are the way they are, right? Because the grapes that are indigenous to that area and grow well, some of them are like what they contribute is tannin, and the others contribute acidity, and some of them just like there's reasons for why certain things exist in blends in the winemaking, but I haven't really ever thought of it from like the farming. And so that's interesting. That's really cool. How old are those vines? They're 3 years old, 4 years old?
They're like 2 and 3. We still have a few in the vineyard, not at our house, that are technically from the first planting, like 5 years, with these new varieties. And then like we've changed like how we're planting them, and we've changed kind of all of the process. Those are like 2-ish years.
Yeah. So sort of like the second generation after we learned. Yeah, those were planted 2021 and 2022. And then we're going to be doing more, this year, 2023, and then more, little by little.
And we planted at our house too in 2021. That's going to be like white grape varieties, also field blend.
How long before you start making wines from the grapes you have is question A, and question B is, are you already making wines, but just to kind of see where they're at structurally?
Haven't made wine from them yet. Ideally, maybe they'll start producing grapes in like 2 to 3 years. And like, maybe in a year or two, we would get like some tiny amount of grapes, and then would make like, 1 5-gallon thing just to see what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
But so far haven't really had grapes, and definitely have been trying to like preference like root growth and strength above like producing some tiny amount of fruit. So hopefully like 2 to 3 years. That's like the long haul project at this point.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah. I think about like, because half of our audience, or some portion of our audience, it's the barbecue people that are listening with a barbecue experience or passion. And you always hear pitmasters complain about, not necessarily complain, but they talk about like their early days and how you wouldn't know you effed up a brisket until 18 hours later, because it takes so long. And I'm thinking, wow, in the wine world, it's like a year later, and you're going like, you're scratching your head going, yeah, we got to do it different next year. But like the just the time it takes to learn is so long. I think that's one of the reasons I appreciate wine so much. And like the process of it takes so much patience. So, and you guys are really laying that out right now, just how much patience.
It's funny, like being that my day job is cooking and then this is my other job, because we've like talked about it all the time. Like in the kitchen, you can like whatever, be learning a new dish. And like in one single night, you could possibly get like 30, 50 like reps of practicing something. And then like that could be in one night. And then if you work a whole week, you can get like over 100 pretty quickly. And so like, even when it's difficult and maybe you had a really hard time at the first week, you get in so many like reps to be able to practice. And in winemaking, it's like people even that have been making wine for 30 years have technically only done it 30 times.
Yeah.
That's like wait a year in between. That can be looked at anyway. But I think, and again, like in our winemaking style, and I think in like the cooking that I've found most exciting is kind of like, okay, yes, what do you do to it? What do you like, how do you smoke it? What's the blends you put on it? What's whatever. But it also still really matters of like, where did that meat come from? Who farmed it? What were they being fed? What like were the people that handled it looked like? What are then your employees doing with it? You know, there's all of these things that kind of go into it from the beginning that often are stuff that you don't have to control as much. So hopefully it doesn't matter, at least in winemaking, that you get so much, well, your experience just takes so much longer.
The parallels I think are so interesting to me between barbecue and wine. So I always try to explain to people like barbecue is really simple, and there's a few like really important steps, but really the less you do to manipulate it, the better. It's all about just doing, using good ingredients, like starting with a good brisket and the wood you use and the smoker you're using, and like just the weather, how much weather can impact how long it takes, how hot your fire stays, how hard it is to maintain temperature. So like if it's super windy, like people will sit there and say like it cooked hot for 2 hours, then cold for 2 hours because they were, really having trouble maintaining the box and the temperatures. But these are all really simple things, right? Like fire is simple. Fire was, invented, at the dawn of man, right? So we're not talking about complicated things. Wine is the same way. Wine is one of the first, imbibing like inventions of humanity, right? But yet it's still, just like with barbecue and pitmasters, wine, it's still something that so many people cannot wrap their heads around. It's still something that people really respect and admire. And it's still something that very few people do, because even though it's so simple, it's also so hard. It's so hard to get it right.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, and that parallel is really true. I think, and it is interesting that those are both things that people, for whatever reason, kind of think are just like magic. It's like there's like a magical transformation from one thing into another. when you know how it works, it's like it's pretty simple, but it is a huge transformation for a pretty simple process in both cases, I think.
Mm-hmm. I remember the first year you guys did plantings. I don't remember the details, but you had to replant. Were they diseased? Yeah. What happened?
Basically the first year we got them shipped from like a nursery, and the way they arrive is like a dormant vine. So they basically just look like a stick, and you can't, it's not like it's like, oh, it's a plant and all the leaves look dead. I can see that. It's a stick. So we planted, 6,000 sticks, and then none of them grew. Oh. And then the nursery like basically finally was like, oh yeah, something was wrong with those. And they didn't really tell us what, but they like they gave us all new ones the next year for free. But yeah, basically we planted whatever was wrong with them, just a bunch of dead vines.
Oh my God.
Look at it as like an opportunity to practice planting, right? Like now you guys
that first year I was building finishing irrigation as people were putting vines in the ground. So To be honest, we weren't prepared. And it was maybe not a negative that we got to do it over again with more preparation the second year.
What wines will they be tasting and all that good stuff? And the wine club and all that fun.
So yeah, we have, as we kind of mentioned earlier, we last year made 16 wines. So currently we have 16 different wines up for offer, which is not always the plan, but we definitely we have a sparkling wine, a rosé, whites, reds, orange wine. We kind of want to offer a pretty large swath.
Tried a lot of different things.
So that anyone who comes can kind of get something they're happy with.
But the reason for making so many different wines is not to offer a large variety.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is because a lot of, we're trying to find the best grapes that we can buy, and often there's only a small amount available. So to get to the total volume that we want to do, we're buying a lot of different lots that are very small. Whereas, there's definitely a lot of, many wineries that they buy one lot of one grape from one vineyard that's larger than our entire production of 16 wines. Yeah. So we're trying a lot of different things because that's what we can do. That's what we have available.
So they could try all 16 different wines at your.
Not all 16 are still available. Some of them are sold out at this point from 2021. And then we have yet to release any 2022 wines yet. That'll probably be in April. But I think right now we have seven or eight wines available. Okay. Either, we just opened the winery, so either Friday or Saturday at the winery, or also on the website, we sell wine and ship everywhere that you can ship wine to.
And people can come taste and purchase as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. In person at the winery in Marfa, definitely.
Yeah, but we can also ship, like Ricky said, we can ship wine. We have distribution in a few states as well. So depending on where people live, you might be able to find wine on the shelf.
Yeah. Colorado, New York, Texas, and
California soon.
Some more places coming.
And New York.
Yeah, let me know once California too, where I can pick it up. I was gonna join the wine club. I was looking at it. I bookmarked it last night because I'd meant to prior to my little stay for a couple months, and then when I came back, because and the wine club, how often is it? It's a once a year?
Yeah, so thanks for reminding us. We should always talk about the wine club. So basically the wine club is you get 6 bottles twice a year, once in April and once in October, and you get 10% off those wines and any other wine you want to buy. And then you also get free shipping as long as you buy at least 3 bottles. So it's definitely if people are trying to try our wine, want to buy it, it is the best deal for sure. And it's not a huge commitment. The way I look at it is if you drink, that's 1 bottle a month for the year. If you drink wine,
I hope that's doable for people.
Yeah.
1 bottle.
I'm a member and I love it.
Yeah,
it's easy.
Our first members.
I remember you talking about it.
Wine shows up.
Yeah. No, I love. Yeah, wine clubs. It's a cool thing to do, especially if it's a wine that you love, because then you don't have to think about it. It just it's a magically appears.
Arrives at your door. Yeah, and it's definitely buying from us or joining the wine club is also the best way to support us or any other small producer. So if there's people you're amped about us or someone else, that's one of the better ways to support people. So
definitely, yeah, that's always a message, us included. But any wine that you really like, it's really good to buy directly from people.
Yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other ways to support? If someone was listening and wanted to support you, are there other ways to support you guys, or is it just
spread the word? Tell your friends, and then I feel like I want definitely want to start speaking this out into the world. Is there any people out there with millions of dollars who want to give us a little more resources, make faster progress, and they think what we're doing is cool? Definitely send us an email.
Yes.
And what is the website?
Until someone calls.
What is the website and what's the social media too? Just before I forget to ask.
It's altamarfa.com, ALTAMARFA. And same on Instagram.
I love your website. Do you manage your website or does somebody manage it?
I do.
It's really good.
Yeah, thanks.
It's super informative. I feel like it's clean and beautiful. There's really good information on there. I know where I can buy your wine. Like all the restaurants that sell their wine, there's a list. I love it. And I know how hard websites are. So I like have a newfound appreciation for websites now.
Yeah. Happy to hear that. I did that as my like graduate thesis. So
yeah. And who does the drawings too?
Our like labels.
Yeah.
That's one of Ricky's friends from like middle school.
I love him so much.
Yeah, I'm showing.
He does an awesome job of like interpreting what are often like really crazy ideas, and making them look really nice and polished and also fun. And
it also kind of goes with the handmade theme, like that everything is you guys. It kind of, even though it's your friend, but it feels very, it doesn't feel corporate. It feels
it's very inner circle.
Have always not wanted the wine to like feel pretentious or feel like it's like not understandable or not approachable or not fun. So I think that's kind of the other way to convey that.
And that's why it's perfect that you're on our show, because that's our goal, is to get people beyond that wall and make sure people realize that it's not that intimidating. It's just start.
Just about enjoying it.
Yeah, definitely.
I will measure the success of this episode based on whether or not you get your like infinity investor from this, like the guy or gal that's just gonna plummet you guys into like super stardom. That's, cross our fingers, guys. That's gonna happen.
Yeah,
we're here for it. That's good.
But is there anything else that you want people to know about you guys or what you're doing? Is there anything we missed? Because I apologize for jumping back and forth, and it's kind of dealt with right now. But people will see that, and they know I'm crazy. Anyways, I've done it a couple times on other episodes. That's what they want.
The nature of Zoom recordings.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, I don't have like a little kid like walk by or a dog. I really think like I'm really excited to talk to you guys, because I love this journey, and it's kind of nice because hopefully you'll get to see this 5 years from now and look back, and if YouTube and the world exists, so you can look back and see that this is what my mindset was, or our mindset.
Definitely. Well, I think already, so on the website we do have a bunch of blog entries with a lot of photos from like the first few years, especially. I haven't done one in like a year due to being too busy, but I hope to do more stuff like that. But I think that a lot of what inspired me to want to do this is reading a book or a memoir of people starting something like this. So it's definitely, I think that the journey has been super valuable for us, seeing other people do things. So definitely I'm excited to look back on this podcast in a few years.
And there might be, like you said, people inspired by this to say, I'm going to do it. I'll wait till the next pandemic and I'll jump and do. No, but it's also, I always like to talk to people in early stages of things, because it shows that it's possible. Like this isn't, it's not easy, but it's possible. And look where Erin and Patrick have come from the 5 years ago too, when you guys met. It's they have a second restaurant, and they have an amazing wine and barbecue podcast. It's crazy.
And a whole world of regret. I'm just kidding. We love all of our decisions.
Wow, that's
absolutely. I mean, Feges #2, the second location. I remember when you guys were moving in and not open yet, and that strip mall, whatever, had like nothing in it. There weren't any other people there, or businesses or anything. And then last time we were there, it's now like looks totally different and is all full of people and activity and stuff. And
we have really influenced the change in Spring Branch. I'm just kidding. It has nothing to do with this, but I feel like the shopping center that we're in is very, very different than it used to be. And just continually getting more and more awesome with each new business that opens up. So
very inspiring to see.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time, and this means a lot. And and this is our inaugural episode of season 2. So thanks for being jumpstarting 2023.
Yeah, well, we're very happy
Thanks
to
for
be
having
here.
us.
Thank you.
That was really cool. What an interesting, I'm glad now I know why you like them so much and why you wanted to connect us, because what great people, but a great story. And that's good for them for, following their dreams. They're kind of like given a little more of a push in life, but gosh.
It's funny because she did definitely say that I think she had a little bit more of a defined 5-year plan. And in his eyes, just based on this interview, I could tell it was just kind of like, what? Yeah. Well, we didn't really know where we were taking things. And I'm like, I definitely remember her saying quite a bit of this in the interview, and they followed through. So maybe for him, it was more just like he needed to get there. But it was so fun when we were working with Katie, and just our relationship that we still have with them. It's the first time I've ever really seen just how much goes into starting it. And I have so much respect because it's got to be next to impossible to do what they're doing. And for a long time, he was driving. Marfa is 8 hours from Houston. So it's 8 hours driving. You can fly to Midland and then drive 3 hours. There's no easy way to get there.
No
he was just going constantly, and then working Monday through Friday. So I just they've worked so hard, and I really am passionate about what they're doing. I want to see them succeed.
Definitely. And I remember in an interview I had with the artist John Fleming, he mentioned to embrace the struggle. And him and his wife, they wouldn't watch the Cowboys game. He would go and paint, or he would do whatever. And it's like he gave up his weekends, and you can do almost anything you want. It's just you have to give up certain things and really be determined. And they did that. And it's I think that'll be good for people that are interested in opening up a spirits business or open up whatever. It's possible. It's just there's a lot of hurdles, but you gotta look.
And they also did it with very little money behind them. Exactly. And I think that's the bridge that a lot of people feel like is impossible. Okay, I can commit to working really hard, or I can commit to 24 hours of labor on my 2 days off, but I can't just make money appear. And I think Ricky has shown me that it's certainly a harder way to do it, but it's possible, right? You can find solutions, you can get things done, you can inch your way to where you need to get to, and you can do it with really limited resources.
Yeah, it's a spectacular story, and so for anybody listening or watching, I'll have links to all their stuff below. But if you're interested in supporting them in a small way, join their wine club. That would be a great way to do it. So that's really cool. Let's talk about Feges stuff.
Yeah,
this is a season 2, episode 1. So can you give a recap a little bit about, just for people that might not know, what Feges BBQ Spring Branch is all about?
Yeah, so Feges BBQ, we have 2 locations. Our original location is in a small little food court inside Greenway Plaza, and we cater largely to office workers. Our second location is Spring Branch, and this is a big standalone restaurant. We're open Tuesday through Saturday. We're open for lunch and dinner. On Sunday, we are lunch only. And we have a full expansive menu of Texas barbecue, really creative sides. We also have things on our menu that go beyond barbecue. So it's really a full dining experience. We've got beer, we have wine, which is why we're on this podcast.
Yes.
Wine brought us together in podcast form. We do a lot of catering. This restaurant feels a little bit just more well-rounded, right? It touches on all the little parts of hospitality and service.
And it utilizes a lot of the skills that you and Patrick have. Not that you're Greenway Plaza, but this one is highlighting beyond barbecue portion.
The beyond barbecue.
Yeah.
We're able to be really creative.
Can you just for fun name a couple creative things that you do that people might not know?
I
know I put you on the spot. I wasn't gonna
I was gonna say this is when Patrick asked me where I want to eat, and I've thought about it every day for a month, and then all of a sudden my brain goes blank. Well, we do a lot of stuff on our menu that I think is creative and fun. A lot of the sides, they don't, so I the elote, I get a lot of credit for bringing elote to barbecue, because that was 5 years ago, and now you see it everywhere, and fried Brussels sprouts. But back when we started serving those things, those were very kind of cutting edge, which just feels weird. But barbecue was so traditional to do things that were not part of the traditions of barbecue felt very new and different. And now, because of the restaurant and the fact that we have a kitchen, we're able to cook things to order. It doesn't have to be, cafeteria style. We have a lot of dishes on our menu that bring in a lot of that creativity, and you feel more just like being at a regular restaurant. And when we do catering and private events, I think that's where Patrick and I really like to come up with stuff and like stretch our wings, because we don't have to create it day after day, month after month. It's kind of just like, we really just have to nail it and get this execution down for this, group of 25. And so we really stretch our wings there. And we've got a couple of events coming up, and the menus I'm really excited about. We've got a brisket bourguignon dish that's, our brisket, how we would normally prepare it, but we're going to chill it. And then when we reheat it, we're going to be reheating it in a bourguignon sauce, pickled pearl onions. So it's going to have this like very rich component to it, very classic traditional French, but so different than how it's ever been really thought of before. We're also going to we do things like smoked fish dip as appetizers. We do smoked brisket meatballs on top of fried cabbage with chipotle cranberry jam on top of it. I don't know. It's like the possibilities are really endless. And we just always like to, not everything has to be smoked, but we have a smoker. And I really kind of like to see how things work on the smoker. I love smoking onions. I used to tell the kitchen, like, we just need to always have smoked onions on hand, because they're a really good base for things. Like, it's a really good base for a soup. It's a really good base for stock. Like, it kind of takes stock in a different, like, it adds a whole layer when you're making a stock if your onions are smoked. And also, if you leave them on there long enough, I mean, that is like the classic caramelized onion, right? Like, low and slow is how you caramelize an onion. So just put it on a smoker, and then you don't have to stir it for 5 hours, right? And you just get this really nice like sweetness, but it also is smoky. I leave it in the skin too, so it doesn't get too smoky.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. And like, we don't do that anymore because we weren't always finding ways to use the onions. So I said, okay, we don't have to always have them on hand now, but like, that's kind of where my head goes whenever I'm thinking of, I want to add complexity to a dish. I'm like, smoke some onions.
So that's also something too, when people come visit year after year, say they're coming to Houston once a year, or they're coming multiple times a month, there's specials, there's different things. You're always thinking, because you have the opportunity to be able to do that at this restaurant and be creative, and you'll have, there's things that you'll have that'll be staples. And then also there are seasonal things too. I've noticed that things have changed throughout the seasons of last year. So that's really cool. I just wanted people to get a handle as to like why we were taught, like why it was important, and why people should, make you a destination, because, give you a try. And I think that, and it's also so people know it's not a meat market style at this location.
Yeah, more restaurant style.
So Super Bowl is coming up. That's a big deal for you guys, right? For barbecue.
Yeah, Super Bowl is a big deal in the barbecue world. We're really like pimping out the wings. We do smoked chicken wings, and we have 5 sauce options. And we also, this was the creative genius of our chef, but we have barbecue bowls. Those have been on our menu for a while. But we were talking about doing them in aluminum half pans and super bowls, right? Same so layers, it's kind of like 7-layer dip, but it's not dip, right? It's like rice, lettuce, elote, like all the layers of flavor, and then the meat on top. But for a party, like enough to feed, a dozen people. And so I thought, oh my God, that's so smart. So super bowls.
Are they on the website, or are they?
Not yet. We will get them on.
So if you
they'll be on by the time. Yeah, they should be on before this podcast is live.
Okay, cool. So that would be just phenomenal for any party.
Yeah.
That's
and we're going to show, so we're normally closed on Sunday after 3 p.m. But for the Super Bowl, just like we did last year, we're going to stay open. We're going to have the Super Bowl on all 3 of our projectors. If the weather's nice, we're also going to have it on the screen on the patio. And so we're pretty much dedicating like all of Super Bowl Sunday to the Super Bowl and watching it. And so we'll have specials, we'll have drinks, we'll have the game on. And last year we had a pretty good crowd. It wasn't crazy. Like there was a really good amount of people where it felt fun, but there was, people weren't fighting for tables and space and seating. Like it was really comfortable.
Yeah.
Which is how I want to watch. That's how I want to be when I'm watching the Super Bowl, is comfortable. I don't want to be like in standing room only.
Standing room only. Yeah. That's just, or trying to like hover over someone when they leave, but no one would leave because you want to watch the whole game. So yeah. So, that's cool. They can't reserve a space there. It's a first come, first serve kind of thing.
It's first come, first serve. So you can't reserve a space, but like I said, it really wasn't necessary. Last year, it was like we had maybe 1 or 2 tables that were still left open. It just really felt like the right size. It was a good crowd. Yeah. And like, Wyatt, who's wasn't into football last year, hopefully he's more into it this year, but he just played outside. So like I was able to watch the game, which is also really nice when you have little kids. Sometimes you're like not able to pay attention, but he was outside playing with the other kids that were there. So I got to actually watch the game and the halftime show.
That's all. Do you have a deadline for people getting in orders in for pickup for the Super Bowl? Like, would you want Friday ahead of time or what?
You can pick up as late as Saturday. So, but I would get the orders in, soon. We're going to have order thing on our website so that you can go to the website and place an order, and really anything on our menu is probably appropriate for the Super Bowl, but we're going to have kind of a special Super Bowl menu where we've taken things that we just think it'll make it easier to kind of filter through everything. These are the things that we think are like perfect for a Super Bowl party. And that'll all be on the website. So you can just go to fegesbbq.com and place your order. You can pick up Sunday even, but I recommend if you do buy in bulk food that's served chilled and you reheat it on your own. So if you want to pick up on Saturday, but you're obviously hosting your party on Sunday, that's the way to go. But you could also pick up on Sunday and get hot food. But I will say this, last year, we had so many people order to go and, large orders. They're ordering like 5 pounds of brisket and 6 racks of ribs. And, we're going to obviously cook a lot that day, but if you're really invested in getting some barbecue, don't wait till the last minute because, we probably will run out of things.
That's excellent advice. That was that was my question, because that will happen, and especially like it happens all across the country. So
any barbecue restaurant, doesn't have to be Feges Barbecue, wherever you're planning to order food from for Super Bowl Sunday, don't wait till the last minute, or you will be hungry.
You'll be hungry, and you'll be lots of nachos, just which are easy to make. But then also too, you do not want to. There's another piece of advice: do not go to the supermarket on Sunday. It is awful. Like I used to work in supermarkets opening cheese shops, and it was just that day is just, and people are like chicken with their chicken with their head cut off. They don't know where anything is. It's just that's bad. Okay, so that, and then also I wanted to make sure you guys make your own sausage now, or you're getting to like
so like it's been a project. We actually started making sausage 5 years ago when we opened at Greenway Plaza. And then we decided we shifted away from making our own sausage because we only had one smoker and you really need to cold smoke sausage. And because we only had one smoker and it was pretty much constantly running at a high temp or higher temp than you would cold smoke, we never had that window to cold smoke. And so we couldn't get a good snap. So we just decided, okay, it's not going to work at this location. And we just found a really great sausage that was made locally. And that's what we've been selling. When we opened in Spring Branch, we have multiple smokers. And so it's been about a year of kind of getting through the opening and the craziness and kind of settling into like a good place. And then Patrick saying, okay, like now's my time. We're going to restart this sausage. And so the first one that we're serving that's available at both locations is Hot Guts. Okay. It's a pork and beef, I believe, link. And we love it. I honestly am like so blown away with how consistently good it is. So highly recommend when you come in, you order the hot links. We also still have the regular sausage because we're going to introduce a house-made like traditional style that's not hot. And until that's probably like any day now, but until we've got that like really locked in, we've got our regular sausage.
The transition. Wow. And then you'll be experimenting as time goes on. That's fun.
I feel like we've opened Pandora's box, because now the guys are just like constantly like, let's try this. And it's like, whoa. Like, give me a traditional sausage, guys. Like, the hot links is phenomenal. Now get me something of equal quality that's, you know, more traditional style, and then start experimenting. But also, like, I feel like the sausage gods, like, you have to pay your respect to the sausage gods before they'll just let you willy-nilly create stuff. So I'm like, you need to like get a little bit more experience, like make this more than, you know, for more than a month, because, you know, of course they already feel like they're pros. And I'm like, no, the pros have been doing it for decades. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're a baby in the sausage world. So like, pay your respects to the sausage gods before you start trying to think like too far outside the box.
Yeah, and be able to be consistent and productive.
Learn lessons. It's like wine, like humidity and moisture, and there's a lot of science in sausage, and I think it's really important that these guys really understand all of that so that they can apply those lessons to the experiments that they want to have, like with making fun sausages.
Definitely. What would you pair your hot gut with?
Wine-wise?
Wine-wise, yeah.
Ooh, I think I would go, so to me, it's really spicy. To most people, it's the perfect amount of spice. So like, because my threshold is probably a little bit low. I think you would need, well, it's rich and fatty. So definitely like you need some acidity to cut through some of the fat that's in there. And then that spice, I would go with like a Riesling, or like a high acid white wine that has like a richness and body to it. We have a wine that's on our menu right now, the Tete Blanche, and it's a white blend, which you just learned a lot about blends, and I think that would be a killer wine with the hot link.
All right, well, if you end up taking a photo or trying that, please let me know, and so that way we could like either add it here or add it later on. I could like promote it. That's cool. That's fun. Okay, well, and then you still have Gold Belly. That's something too. People can when they go to the website, it's easy to find where you ship. So
if you're not local and you want barbecue, we ship a lot of great barbecue options are available from Feges BBQ on Gold Belly. So definitely recommend going online and placing those orders and getting that stuff in on time. So yeah, Gold Belly, love working with Gold Belly. They were fantastic for us during the holidays. I feel like a lot of people around the country got to try barbecue, even in Hawaii, even in Alaska. And so it just is really cool to think about people all over the country, like eating your food.
Yeah, that's awesome. But it's so good to see you this year. We're gonna make sure that we try to get people from all walks of life within the wine world. And take care. Bye.